Welcome to the On the Whistle podcast. My name is Ali Howorth, and I am here in sunny, and very hot Philadelphia after Widad Casablanca's 4-1 loss to Juve. We're going to do a bit of a double header here, chatting about both the Sundowns game and the Juve Widad game today. Wasn't able to record yesterday just because very chaotic day. Long days, very little sleep. We go again. Love the Club World Cup. Really enjoying it so far. African teams, we'll get into it, but they've I think hit par is what we'd say. But we've seen some brilliance and we've seen some not so brilliant work from the African sides. But without further ado, let's get into it. First up, Mamelodi Sundowns 3, Borussia Dortmund 4. Oh man. We dared to dream. Mamelodi Sundowns came so close to getting it. So close to getting a draw or a win, but at the same time, they were so far because of the mistakes they made. One of the big questions coming into this tournament was how would Sundowns and Miguel Cardozo approach this tournament? In many ways, as Lawrence Kohler told us quite a few times, Cardozo was almost brought in for this tournament, even though he brought him back in October, and it was so that he could shore up this team, make them more defensive, and make them very able to compete at the Club World Cup. Now, Sundowns fans, I think when he first came in, were kind of okay with that. They're like, okay, look, if defensive coach, it's not our style. It's not Xushine and Piano. It's not Casiflava. It's not the Brazilian football, but we'll take it if we can get results, and we'll take it. And they kind of kept taking it. And then, towards the end of the Champions League, when they lost it, there was a sense of, well, we played this kind of miserable football, but we didn't get anything out of it. We didn't win the CAF Champions League. We were lucky to even get to the final, which they were. They weren't a bad side, but they also weren't an exciting side. They didn't dominate anyone like perhaps they have in the past couple of years. But then there was then a reset, and it's like, okay, we're going into the Club World Cup. How does he approach it? Against Ulsan Hyundai, Sundowns are the favourites. They dominate possession. Yeah, maybe a bit stale, kind of what we kind of expect from them in the Champions League. But they get the goal. They could have had a couple others. All around, good performance, not amazing. Coming into the Dortmund game, then there was this question, okay, A, how do Sundowns compete with Dortmund's physicality, their pace, the kind of pace of the game, not just the pace of the players themselves and their strength? And B, how do Sundowns approach this? Do they play a bit more defensive, or do they go all in? And let me tell you, they went all in. A year ago, Stanley Screamer Shabalala, the godfather of South African football and the godfather of Mamelodi Sundowns, passed away. But wherever he is watching from, he will be proud, because that was some Xushine and Piano, and that was some proper Sundowns football. They completely dominated Dortmund in terms of possession, on the ball work. I think they had a higher XG, shots on target, shots, big chances, possession. They had almost 60% possession against Dortmund. Now, to put that into context, right? Borussia Dortmund's team is worth, according to Transfer Market, almost 15 times what Sundowns is worth. 15 times. Dortmund signing Joe Bellingham for this tournament, from what I could find, now, not 100% sure because some fees are undisclosed, so you can't ever quite know. That signing alone is more money than Sundowns have spent in the entire history of the club on transfers, right? One player is worth more than the entire history of Sundowns in terms of transfer signings. And yet, who dominated? Who was the team that brought this flair? Who was the team that kept control of the ball? Who was the team that were on the front foot? It was Mamelodi Sundowns right from the off. They were controlling the game. They were attacking Dortmund. Tashreeq Matthews, right? That was a big question, right? Because he hasn't had a great end to the season, particularly in the CAF Champions League. But coming into this game, he didn't start in the first game. Arthur Salles didn't have a great game. Tashreeq Matthews starts this game, and we love to see it. Why? Tashreeq Matthews used to play at Dortmund, right? He used to be at Dortmund, but he was never, ever given a chance. He didn't make one appearance for Dortmund in his whole time there. I think it's like about a year. So there's a huge sense of, okay, how's he going to do? He's up against Jan Couto on that right wing back, and then Nicolas Soulé. I know he's not the best, most elite player, German international. How's Tashreeq Matthews going to do? And he was excellent. Constant running in behind Couto, running into that channel between them, absolutely sitting down Nicolas Soulé a couple times, and that set the tone for the Sundowns team. And then they take the lead, and boy, is it a good goal, right? Lucas Ribeiro, when I did my preview of this team, he's the magic man. He's the one who makes stuff happen in the final third, and boy did he in this game. Gets a very, very reminiscent goal of Hatem Ben Arfa's for Newcastle against Bolton, or to a lesser extent, Heung-min Son's against Burnley. Collects the ball in the center circle in his own half, immediate drop of the shoulder, beats his man, carries the ball past another two Dortmund players, and suddenly he's just 1-on-1. And there was three South African players, three Sundowns players against Gregor Kobel. And you're I remember thinking that one moment, like, oh my days, please just pass. He doesn't, and it's okay because he finishes. Brilliant finish, kind of curling effort just over Kobel's shoulder. And Sundowns are suddenly cooking, and you're thinking, oh my goodness, one of the biggest, statement performances of this tournament is coming up, because Sundowns are in full flow and Dortmund are just all at sea. And then, heartbreaking. With Sundowns, you get the good and you get the bad of their style, and this was the bad. And of all the people, Ronwen Williams was the one who made it. Mr. Reliable. I know he's not been quite as good this season as last season, but he passes straight to Felix Metsche, who taps home, and suddenly it's 1-1 Dortmund. A couple minutes later, boom. I think it's Thibaut Mokoena gets dispossessed, crossed in, Serhou Guirassy beats man in the air header. Later in the half, same thing, cross. Joe Bellingham beats Marcelo Allende in the air, kind of falls to him, he volleys it in. Suddenly you're going into halftime, 3-1 down. It looks like it's game over. Second half, again, Sundowns playing well, playing good football. Then suddenly on the left wing of Dortmund's left wing, cross. Kulisu Madao puts out a leg. He has to try and block the cross. Instead, it deflects into his own net. What can you do? Somehow, Dortmund have been outplayed and are 4-1 up. But Sundowns, to their credit, kept going. They kept pressing. They kept attacking. They kept pushing. And they almost got back into it. Ikram Rainer's off a free kick. Header hits the post. He's there to get the rebound in. Superb center forward work. And then Lebo Motiba, who came on off the bench, who kind of has hardly featured for Sundowns this season. I think he's been out with injury. Came on in the CAF Champions League final, looked good. Suddenly he's the man in form. He comes off the bench instead of Peter Shalilule, the all-time goal scorer in South African club football. They bring on Motiba, and for good reason. Sundowns score again. It's him. He checks his run marvelously as Sundowns win the ball high up the pitch, slipped into him, and he finishes. And suddenly it's 4-3. And it's such a shame, because I think for me, the one who summed up this game so much was Ronwen Williams, right? Because I know it's strange to say, having conceded 4 goals, he was excellent, right? Particularly his distribution, that pass in the second half toward at the death, that kind of Ederson chopping kind of side-on volley pass all the way 60 meters. I think it was Mokoena who was chasing it down, was phenomenal. His saves were excellent. But what will be remembered? What will he remember this game for? What will people remember of him about this game? It's that one mistake that he gives it to Felix Metsche. And that is the issue for Sundowns, right? Is 95% of it is amazing. But that other 5% has killed them. It's so frustrating. And we talk about the Sundowns team over the last, I would say, 3-4 years. They have 2 Achilles heels, right? In my opinion. One, sometimes they can play themselves into trouble, passing out from the back. And again, that's an issue that you take with the good, because the good is so much. You take that with you. But we saw that in the first goal. They just give the ball away in their own box, tap in. So frustrating. The second thing, and I think for me the bigger issue that they've had over the last 3-4 years, whether it's Petro Luanda beating them, or Asfar Rabat, or Raja, or Esperance, or Wydad in the last few years in the CAF Champions League, their big issue has been box defending against crosses. And we saw that again. Where they really struggle to deal with physical teams who cross a lot. And we saw that for their second goal. We saw Serhou Guirassy leaping above, I think it was Ashley Cupido. It might have been Labusa to give them the lead. Not Labusa, Kakana. To give Dortmund the lead. And the same, Joe Bellingham beating Marcelo Allende in the air, and then kind of headering it up in the air and then volleying it in. And there's this just sense of you just need that strong spine. You just need that kind of bit of grit. And it's frustrating, because that's what Miguel Cardozo was brought in to do. He was seen as this defensive coach, this one who brings about kind of structure and good box defending. And so for me, it's a bit frustrating to see them not play that out. Now, where do they go from here, right? Because they've had 2 games, one against Ulsan where they were kind of on par. Excuse me. They were kind of on par. They weren't phenomenal, but they dominated. They played their football, and they won 1-0. And, it could have been 2 or 3, given those kind of offside goals that were disallowed and the handball from Ikram Reyners. Against Dortmund, they were excellent. They were so good, like I said, for 95% of it. They now have to go into this game against Fluminense. Fluminense, who showed their own glass jaw. They were losing to Ulsan until quite late on. They ended up winning. But Sundowns have to win. And I think if you had given them that option, that come the Club World Cup, they had to beat arguably the 3rd best Brazilian team to get to the knockout stages, I think they probably would have taken that. And given the way they've played, I know Fluminense were really impressive in that first game against Dortmund. And against Ulsan, they were dominant, but they also showed a glass jaw, which Ulsan kind of broke a couple times. I think Sundowns will fancy themselves. I think it will be an amazing game, just like their game against Dortmund, because Fluminense, I think, they'll want to have the ball more than Dortmund will. So they'll want to keep the ball. They'll want to contest for possession in a way that neither Dortmund nor Ulsan did. But they've also got the quality. You saw John Arias' free kick. They've got the likes of Ganzo. These really, really excellent players. So I think it's going to be an amazing game. I think it's probably one of the biggest and best games to watch going into the final round of the Club World Cup. We're not just here to talk about Sundowns. We're here to talk about Wydad. Wydad. Knocked out of the Club World Cup, the first African team to do so. And it feels weird to say because they've lost 2 games and conceded 6 goals and only scored 1. But they've kind of hit par. Honestly, it's crazy to say because expectations were so low them coming into this tournament. I think they were excellent against Man City, and I think against Juventus, excellent. They were good. Against Juventus, they did. It was almost a like-for-like performance against Man City. They were good, they overperformed, but they shot themselves in the foot. This time, to their credit, they didn't concede in the 2nd minute. They conceded in the 6th minute, so they really survived for a longer amount of time. But boy, was it frustrating. Kenan Yildiz, lovely little interchange from the Juve players, great goal, and it kind of killed the Wydad spirit. But credit to the fans, they were excellent. Shout out to the fans, especially when they get the goal, which we'll get to, they release smoke bombs, cover the pitch in kind of smoke. It's beautiful to watch. It's kind of amazing scenes. As my brother, who is an avid football fan but doesn't like smoke, would say, I'd hate to be in that stand, but I think I would love it. It was amazing to watch. 10 minutes later, then on the broadcast in the stadium in the tannoy, the kind of announcer says pyrotechnics are not allowed in the stadium. Anyone seen with any pyrotechnics will be kicked out and banned permanently. Immediately 5 flares are set off and they just start going again. And so I think I love that kind of energy from the Wydad fans, and they were in good voice. Despite being outnumbered by Juve fans, they definitely were the louder of the 2, and they were good to see. But in the game itself, obviously they concede the goal in the 6th minute, and then they concede again. I think it's in the 16th minute. Again, Kenan Yildiz, a fantastic strike. Such a good strike from the edge of the box. But both goals were great examples of Wydad having a good structure, but then allowing too much space between their lines. No one is being aggressive from that back 3, which, again, this is the 2nd game they've ever played in a back 3, I think this whole season, or certainly since Ben Hashem has taken over. And so, they got that shape, that back 5, but then once you get in behind Zamraoui and Mubarak, those 2 young midfielders, suddenly there's all this space, and they're able to, give the 1-2s, able to give the flick-ons to Yildiz. So frustrating. Now, just like the game against City, Wydad actually were brave going forward. They weren't overly defensive. They tried to get going forward. Lord and Amrabat, shout out. He less than 6 months ago, he couldn't even get into the Hull team. Hull, who have been struggling in the Championship, and he comes, and both against City and against Juve, he is, he outplaying Savinho. He's outplaying Ryan Cherki. In this game, he's outplaying Francisco Conceição. He's brilliant, and he was in the goal for Wydad. So the goal comes from long ball. Samuel Obiang is coming into this side for Cassius Mailula. Now, Cassius Mailula has been one of Wydad's best players this season, if not their best. Lovely, creative talent, can kind of play anywhere across the front 3. Fantastic player. but he's not a proper number 9. He's not got that kind of strength about him. He's not a big lad. Obeng is not as good as Mailula, but he's strong and he is a focal point and he's a big lad. And that's exactly what he did. He just made himself a presence. And that's how they scored the goal. Long ball up to him. He flips it on. Norden Amrabat, who's kind of been given this free role. He's ostensibly a right winger, but he's appears everywhere. This is on the left wing. Picks up the ball, immediately gets head up, slides through Tembi Lorch with a fantastic finish. I'm not sure if it was actually credited to him in the end. I think they said that it was an own goal from the keeper, which I'm not quite sure how that worked. I haven't seen all the replays, obviously, having just come from the stadium. But Wydad, yeah, 2-1. They're back in it, and like I said, crowd goes wild. Smoke's let off. They then start, in my books, it was hard for me to kind of analyze the second half because I actually went in with the Wydad fans. So, I'm very biased in my analysis of the second half. I think they're the better team for most of it. Yes, Juve, I think, hit the post from a corner set piece. But Wydad, I think, are, they're the ones on top. They're pushing Juve. I think, good example is they have 15 shots by the end. Juve only has 9. That's really impressive. But what for me shows the real difference in the stats is, yes, Juve only had 9 shots. They had 5 big chances. Wydad only had 2. Now, one of those is the penalty in the last minute, so, we'll leave that to one side. But that's the difference, is Juve, when they got into the final third, were able to craft really good openings in a way that Wydad weren't. Wydad were able to get into the final third, beat a man, create a chance, but not a good one. They're not, they take a snapshot. I think Lorch did this a couple of times where he kind of gets in a good space just outside the box. Instead of clipping it in or sliding through a different player, he just takes the shot. And Wydad were brave. They really were. And they play really well. They're pushing for it. You could really sense it in the crowd. Like, the energy was just ramping up. The tension ramping up. They're starting to create some chances. And then Yildiz goes and scores again. Hat-trick for Kenan Yildiz. And again, it's the exact same. He's through on goal. And instead of just snapshotting, he takes this fake shot, sits down his man, puts it in the corner. Excellent finish. And then last minute, Wydad give a penalty. And Vlahovic scores, and it's 4-1. Now, this game was not 4-1, and this is why I think Wydad, if anything, can be pleased with the way they played these 2 games, because for me, that was a 2-1 game, maybe 3-1 Juve. Like, yes, Juve deserved to win it, obviously, but Wydad were very close. They pushed them in a way that I don't think we expected them to do against a team like Juventus, but Juventus' quality told. For Wydad, they're knocked out of the tournament. First African team to be knocked out. I think 4th or 5th team to be knocked out, and of the teams that played in the second match day. But I think they can be really proud of what they've done. Now, not proud of the way they've been run as a club, not proud of their season, but proud in isolation of how they've done in these first 2 games of the Club World Cup. And that is crazy to say, given that they've lost 2-0 and 4-1. But they genuinely, that's how low expectations were of Wydad. That's how low hopes were. That's how bad they've been this season, is that those were the expectations. I think we'll see how Al Ain get on later tonight. They're playing Man City, so they'll be our final game. Wydad's final game. We'll be there in DC at the Audi field. They have to see themselves as favourites against Al Ain. Al Ain are also in a really bad place, as we saw against Juve. Wydad lost 4-1. Al Ain got smashed 5-0. I think if Wydad don't win that game, then it's not a failure, but then it's a negative tournament. If they win, for me, given where they're coming from in this tournament, it has been a success. They've done their job. They were never going to get out of this group. They just never were. If this was Wydad from 2022, having just won the CAF Champions League, with players like Yahya Jabran, Ashraf Dari, Yahya Atiat Allah, El Mutraji, with Walid Regragui on the bench, then I think, yes, it's a realistic hope. Obviously, they still wouldn't be favourites, but a realistic hope to sneak past Juve, get a draw against them, etc. But this is not that team. They're a poor team. They're a bad team. And for them, what they'll take heart from is that they brought on these few players. I don't know if some of these players like Amrabat will stick around, or Al Soma, but they've got other players they have signed, like Stefan Aziz-Ki, hopefully will be a big part of this. Hopefully they can hold on to Lorch and Mailula, we'll see, because they're both on loan. But there's a sense that they can build something, and obviously they're getting like whatever it is, 9 million euros or dollars from this tournament. That will be genuinely transformational. So if they run themselves in a way that they haven't run themselves in the last few years, then they should take that money and they really should start to dominate the Moroccan league again. I know Arsbekan have been excellent this season. They've done so well under Moin Shabani, and as well as Asfar Rabat are obviously a class side as well. So we'll see. But for me, Wydad, so far, they've honestly been par in terms of their performances. Heading into the final match day now, quick review. Al Ahly are playing tomorrow against Porto. They have to win if they want to go through. And even if they do win, it depends on other results because of Inter Miami beating Porto. So they kind of have to hope that Palmeiras beat Inter Miami and that they beat Porto. Very, very slim chance. Can they beat Porto? Absolutely. Can Palmeiras beat Inter Miami? Absolutely. Will both happen with the goal difference swing that Al Ahly need? I give them like 10% chance. Sundowns, or Esperance next. They have a simpler task. Beat Chelsea and that's it. Beat Chelsea and they're through. Now it's simpler. It's probably a lot more difficult because Chelsea, for all the nonsense that is around that club, and for Flamengo, for the fact that Flamengo dominated them and kind of comfortably beat them in the end 3-1, they're still a phenomenal side, and you look at the players they've got, it's ludicrous. But Esperance played really well against LAFC. They've shown that they've got that defensive resilience. They've shown that they can create chances now without Yusuf Belali. Do they have much in terms of the creative? I actually think in many ways they might actually be all right, because I think Belali is one of these players that is magnetic, but he takes away from other players as well. So I think we might see a bit more of Jan Sass, a bit more of Elias Makwena, a bit more of Abderrahman Kanate. And then Mamelodi Sundowns, pretty much same thing. Beat Fluminense, you're through. Draw or loss, you're out. And again, I think obviously they have a better task. They're the ones who I'm hanging my hat on that could get through. I would give them maybe like 30% chance of beating Fluminense. I think I might even be a bit generous, obviously, because they need to beat them. They can't just get a draw. And then finally, Wydad, hopeless Wydad, that have kind of crafted a bit of love for them, I guess, in this tournament. And they're already out, but they should be. I think, depending on how I go tonight, I think they should beat Al Ain. Hope you've enjoyed our coverage. It's a bit chaotic because this tournament's a bit chaotic and I'm running on fumes, to be honest. But if you enjoy the stuff we do, please please share it, please, shout to the high heavens how much you love and hate us. However your opinions are. If you think I'm a muppet, tell me. But if you've enjoyed it, please do share us on The Whistle on YouTube, on The Whistle on Acast or Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you get your audio podcasts. And you can find us on social media as OTW_podcast or on The Whistle podcast. Just search us. So until the next time, much love.